to kind of roll something around on, especially as you're going. You don't want to kind of accidentally squish something or dent a carving or whatnot. So just bear with me a second here. All right, and this is a pretty small little piece. So I'm going to take the lid off and we'll start with just on the sides. What I wanted to do was actually use the, right here, the the hexagon carving rib. We'll start with this, and I'm gonna use that to actually sort of space out the design I'm gonna do. I was thinking this could be a little web-like, so we'll do some, you know, hexagonal shapes. I think it'll look neat. And so I'm gonna use just the back of the tool. Sometimes we'll get questions, you know, what's that for? And it's just a handy little pointer. So use the back of the tool, and I'm gonna put a little dot, I've done this before, a little dot down below each corner of this. And so it's just a quick way to divide it into 6 sides or 6 sections. And very subtle, so I don't need to make a big deal about it. I just want to use this as a reference for later on. And I'll show you what it looks like as soon as I'm done here. Just like that. So all this does, all I'm doing is adding a tiny little dot. You can barely see it. Maybe you can see this one a little bit better. It's very subtle, but it's just going to allow me to kind of space everything out. You know, I don't always divide things into sections, but kind of if you do like a lot of patterns, if you have a lot, you can make it blend together, but I'm gonna try 6 on here. And so I do a tiny little dot like that. So this one, again, it'd be fun. I thought it would be a cool little web design. We're going to use the rib here, and I use each of those dots to align the carving rib. And so there's a number of ways to do this, and I'm going to try and fill this little space in the middle. I have some lines here and some grooves here, and so I'm just going to do a carving right in the middle of that. So I'm going to see what sort of fits the best. I think we'll end up doing this one because it actually fits right in there. So I'll hold it right there. So the next thing is there's a lot of ways you can use the rib. You can actually carve right in the groove. You can make some lines, like kind of trace it. I think in this case, I will just trace it. A lot of the time I carve right in the groove, which totally works. But in this case, I'm going to just do a little bit of a trace outline. So that's plenty for me to work with. You can probably barely see it, but it's going to be a little hexagonal shape in there. So all this is doing is sort of outlining, and then I know I can carve a straight line there. So I'm gonna do that same thing below each one of my little dots. And this is easy to align because this inner hexagon shape, it just happens to fit right in that area that I'm carving. So it's gonna be real quick and easy to go through. And we'll get 2 more. So you don't need much. I'm gonna carve right over it, but this is gonna help quite a bit for later on. One more here. All right, so now I'll brush those off. This is going to be very subtle. You might not even see it again, but I have just a very light sort of sketch, you could call it, on the surface. Each one is a little hexagon, and I'm going to start with the P21. This is a 1mm square tip, so it's a straight blade. It's going to make a very shallow little square groove on each one of these. And let me adjust a little bit. Sometimes when I'm working fall, it's very small, it's kind of tight turns, I will move the grip up all the way. Feel free to do so. And I'm gonna start on the bottom of each one of these and just make a little short line. And I'm gonna go through and do that same one on each one of them, just to make sure they're all the same. I talk about this often, where if you can just do one little sort of carving or groove at a time, it's a lot easier, at least for me, to just stay very consistent. If I, carved one whole section, by the time I get to the next one, I forgot how I started it. So it's better just to do one tiny little bit at a time. That way, they're all gonna end up the same. And then we'll do this side here. And it's not like it's really any, slower or faster. You're still carving the whole time. Sometimes it just is a little bit easier to be repetitive. And when I'm ending, what's nice about these square tools is I'm ending right in these corners, so I end up with a nice sharp inner corner in there. You can do it, so a lot of the U-tips, you could do the same pattern, but you're not gonna quite get as sharp of internal corners. So that's what the square blades are really good at. And then once I have this hexagon shape, it'll be kind of easy to go from there. And I'm going to add a bunch of other little lines to sort of make it look maybe like a spider web. We'll find out. Sometimes you start these things with one idea and ends up a little bit different. And we'll do the top. Actually, I think I'm going to leave the top open, and I'm going to do more of a horizontal line straight across. Just like that. So it'll kind of connect everything. So top here to top over here. And if you wanted to, you could use a straight edge for this. I'm not going very far, so I'm just going to freehand it a little bit. Just like that. And if anyone's wondering, so this is a B-mix. It's kind of like a stiff leather hard. It's not gonna be malleable at all. Like if I squeeze the rim, it would break before it bends. And that, I like carving at that kind of stage because a lot of the straight bladed tools and you can just get a very clean line. You're not gonna accidentally sink in too deep. And all the little bits that come out are very clean. So you can kind of tell by all the little shavings that pop out of here. So I have that going all the way around. And then I'm going to add, let's see, something that would be fun on here. So I'm gonna use a very fine tool next, but I wanna add just a little bit more of a shape. And I think what would be fun is right here. Actually, we'll go, sometimes you just gotta look at this for a second. Yeah. So we'll go just like this. And I'm just gonna go straight down into this bottom groove, kind of staying parallel to that shape that I already have. And then I'm gonna connect those on top. One little horizontal line. Just like that. Okay, so we started with a sort of hexagon web shape, and now we have this fun pattern going all the way around. And so now we'll switch to some fine tools. I'm gonna use the FP4. Let's see here. Yeah. So the FP4, it's one of our finest V-tip tools. Everyone asks, you know, what's the smallest blade, the smallest little carving, and there's a small group of them. The FP4 is a V-tip, the FP1 is a U-tip. I think everyone kind of lands in one or the other. I like using the FP4 quite a bit just because it is a small little V-tip, and you'll see it'll make a very fine little line in there. What I want to do is I'm going to sort of trace some of these shapes and just make a very small line right below it. And what's important is when you're using the fine tip tools is you're not going that deep into the clay. You can always push it deeper, but I really care about that very tip. Just trying to make it as thin as possible. And it doesn't take much, you know, it's a very light groove. Okay. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the inside of these hexagon shapes. And in this case, I'm going to go all the way around. Just like that. So I get a nice little hexagon in there. in this case, it's a little bit easier for me to just do one whole section at a time. So we're just going along and trying to keep an even spacing all the way around. And it's funny, I'm barely, barely dragging this blade across the surface. Hardly even making a mark. It's like barely the weight of the tool itself is what's going to pull this through. I see Andrew Clark was in here. Andrew Clark visited last week. It was great to see him. Thanks for coming. Definitely excited to see what you make. If you guys haven't checked out Andrew Clark's page, go look. Go look right now. It's worth it. He did a couple workshops in San Diego, and we were lucky enough to hang out with him here for a little bit. All right, so we just kind of doodle around there a little bit and clear those out. So you can see you have the P21. It's a small tool, but in comparison, like the line width is going to be quite a bit bigger than the fine point. So we end up with something like that. I'm going to try something with this new tool. So keep in mind, this is not out yet. We're messing around with it. It's basically a variation of the P6, which is a very thin tool. So you guys might not like this because you can't go look at it, but I'm going to show you, and if it's something that interests you, definitely let us know so we can keep going with it. It's a variation of the P6 that's just even smaller. So it's a tiny little hook tip. You can barely see it if it's, if you look straight on, but small little hook tip, and it's made to make even thinner lines than the FP4. So what I'm going to do with it is just make a few little vertical lines here. Just to kind of see how well this fills in. And so this is different than the FP4 in that you can't quite pivot it as much. It's going to be a little bit better for those straighter lines, but it's a lot more maneuverable than the current P6. And so that's some small little things we're working on improving. And this is going to be sort of a slow little section here, but that's really what this tool is going to be able to do. And that's sort of the design here, is just very small, thin little lines. That across. So it's kind of just like shading in one little area. Just like that. go. So we got all of those. And so what I'm trying to do is sort of match some of these lines up here, but from a distance. And once you get a little bit of glaze in there, it just kind of shades it in a little bit. So I'm gonna do the same thing on all these little hexagons going the other direction. We will, let's see, vertical or horizontal, I'm not sure. I think we'll try vertical. Now you could do the same thing with the FP4, the FP1, or the P6R. It's just gonna be a little bit smaller here. And this is kind of a fun one to do because it's, like you saw before, it's just making some, basic shapes with the metal rib, and all I'm doing here is just filling them in, and it creates a nice kind of contrast on the outside. And I'll probably glaze this just with, I could wipe a stain in there, or I'll probably just, I've been kind of experimenting with different glazes, just kind of getting them in all these cracks and wiping everything off. And I do like the bare clay on the outside. I know some folks don't. It's up to you. But that's kind of been a fun thing to mess around with lately. Okay, so we'll leave the side like this. I think that looks neat enough. We'll swap over to the lid. And so we kind of want to do something matching. So when that goes together, I think we'll do maybe some hexagons going around, maybe one in the middle up top, and then we'll do a similar sort of line pattern. And so for this one, I'm gonna space it out. And for this one, I just wanna make sure that all these dots here all kind of line up in the same spot. So I wanna make sure this is in the middle, which that looks good. And I'm going to lightly trace the outside there. So we'll go back to the P21, and this time I'm going to do a full hexagon. Trying to get those really crisp inside corners, just like that. Then I'm going to sort of match this going around. Actually, I think it'll be neat if I do 3 of them. Like that. Then we'll go down to the this little thin line on the edge, kind of break it apart. Okay. Then switch to the FP4. So in this case, I'm gonna do the inside of this, and then I'm actually gonna do kind of the opposite, just to leave me some room. So we'll do a thin little line here. We will do one, let's do one small one here. These pattern tools, if you're wondering, I think Jamie is responding to you as well. We sell these. This is a hexagon carving rib. So if you look on our website, you can search for a carving rib or a metal rib. They're all in there. We have a few different shapes. And then I'm going to do one right here. So I'm sort of matching the shape I just did, except just using the fine point tool. So this will kind of all add some different effects. And if you wanted to, you could, if this was something larger, I would come back with the metal rib and actually line all this up and use that as well. Because it's so small, it works pretty well to kind of get one solid shape and use that as like your framework going out. Okay, so now we'll switch back to this little tester tool, and I'm gonna do a bunch of lines in each one of these. And we'll come back to that one. Okay, and we'll come in here. We'll do the same thing on these larger ones. Little half shapes. And on all these vertical lines, I'm trying to keep as similar spacing as possible. And also trying to sort of match these rain spacing going around. Just like that. Now here's the tricky question, is what to do in the middle. Do you do horizontal, or do you kind of come out from the middle? I'm not sure. If anyone has an opinion, let me know. I think if you start in the middle and kind of come out, it could look a little funny because it gets really tight in there. Let's see. These ones are all vertical though, kind of straight lines. So I think we'll do that just to match it. We'll pick one here. Just like that. So we got a cool top to that jar, and overall kind of looks the same. You have some matching patterns, and there you go. I think we'll leave her there. Sometimes you just gotta get off the bus, don't keep going. Oh, smaller hex. I missed it. I would have done it if I saw that 2 seconds earlier. We'll have to redo it. And that it's an interesting point. So if you do something like this, and I have done it before, where I'm carving something small and it's like, oh, it doesn't look good, you know, whether you mess up or you want to redo it. I totally have taken a little bit of slip and just sort of like rubbed it in there and gotten it smooth. You're kind of filling in those cracks, and then I go and recarve. I've totally done that before. I've done it also where if I do cover the outside in slip and I'm carving through and mess up, or I just don't like how it looks, gone back and sort of filled it in. So that's possible. You know, it's not always permanent yet when you do it. But there you go. So yeah, time to get off the bus. Everyone's missed their stop on the bus at some point and stayed on a little too long. But I thought this kind of turned out cool, and nice little, maybe spooky jar, maybe radioactive, put something fun in there. So there you have it. Anyway, thanks for joining. Hope maybe you saw something new. If you haven't seen the carving rib, these are fun. I use them all the time for kind of just what you saw, whether it's dividing pieces or just getting that repeatable angle size. So it's nice where this hexagon up top will match the sizes on the side. So it's stuff like that where you just want to make a repeatable design. We have a curved, sort of a circle one for arc, and a triangle. So check those out. It's just a handy tool to use every once in a while. Other than that, thanks for joining. I think we'll call her there. Happy Halloween. Have an awesome night. And I think we'll see you next week for something else. Again, let me know what you think of this little fine tip tool. If that's something that interests you, well, I'll pay attention to it. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.